Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let me tell you about Gonzo, the human equivalent of a check engine light that just won't turn off. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. She blocked a parking spot for her friend, so I blocked her friend. One scorching afternoon around 5 p.m., we found ourselves in the middle of a packed parking lot outside a small market. The temperature was over 105 degrees, and between the heat and the crowd, it was already a stressful situation. My wife, my in-laws, our 2 kids, and I were all together, but since we needed extra room for everyone and their stuff, we'd come in 2 separate cars. To make things more difficult, a local fair was going on nearby, so parking was a nightmare. Every space was full, and people were circling like vultures waiting for a spot. My mother-in-law is handicapped and has a placard for accessible parking. She has trouble walking because of her bad back, and we always try to find her the closest spot possible. But that day, not a single handicapped spot was open. We kept driving around the lot, hoping something would open up, but no luck. Finally, I spotted 2 empty spaces, one closer to the entrance and one a little farther out. I figured I'd be smart about it. I took the farthest space so that my in-laws could take the closer one. That way, my mother-in-law wouldn't have to walk as far in the heat. Just as my in-laws started pulling into that closer space, a woman came out of nowhere. She'd just gotten out of a car parked farther down the lot. Instead of minding her business, she marched right into the empty space and stood there like she was guarding it. She crossed her arms and planted her feet like she was daring anyone to challenge her. My in-laws tried to ease their car into the spot, hoping she'd move, but she wouldn't budge. She stood her ground, acting like she had every right to block the space because she was saving it for someone else. It didn't matter that my mother-in-law was the one who actually needed it. At that point, I'd had enough. I got out of my car, walked across the lot, and stood right behind my in-laws' car. Then I stepped into position in front of the car that was apparently coming to claim the spot this woman was guarding. I stood right there in the path, blocking the way. She started yelling at me to move, telling me I had no right to block the spot and that she was holding it for her friend. I kept my voice calm and told her, "Nope, you can't stand in a spot to save it. That's not how parking works. My in-laws need this space, and you're not going to stop them from parking here." She kept shouting, calling me names, and demanding that I move, but I didn't feel like arguing anymore. I simply sat down right there on the burning asphalt. The heat from the pavement was brutal. I could feel it through my jeans, but I wasn't about to back down. I said, "I've got all day," and just sat there. The woman didn't know what to do. She just kept trying to yell me out of the way, but I wasn't going anywhere. After a few minutes of this standoff, with the sun beating down on all of us, she realized she wasn't going to win. She gave me a death glare, huffed, and stormed off, leaving the space open for my in-laws to finally pull in. The best part, in all the chaos, her friend missed whatever other spot they'd been aiming for. So not only did they lose out on the space I was protecting, but they ended up parking even farther away than they would have if they hadn't tried to play games. My butt felt like it'd been cooked on a frying pan, but I'd do it again without a second thought. Seeing my mother-in-law able to park close and get inside without extra struggle made it completely worth it. I'd be too nervous that a person crazy enough to pressure a handicapped person out of a closed parking spot would be crazy enough to run me over or stab me. I'm glad there are people like you out there to put these people in their place. And our second story. They wanted free after-hour support via WhatsApp. Now they pay my phone bill every month. I was reminded of something that happened last year, and I figured I'd share the story. It still makes me smile. The cast. Me, boss, my manager at the IT company where I work, AM, the a-hole manager from the client side, SD, the service desk that's supposed to follow protocol. Background. I work for an IT company that outsources me to a large media company. It's a decent gig, but the hours can be brutal. I average about 60 hours a week and rack up around 40 hours of overtime every month. My role is to support the media company's operations across 13 countries. It's a big responsibility, and when something breaks, it's my problem. According to the contract, which AM himself signed, by the way, when there's an issue after regular hours, the service desk, SD, is supposed to call me. That's the process. But SD is terrible at their job. They either don't call at all or they wait until hours after an issue starts, which leads to downtime and costs the company money. Because of this, it's become normal for the managers in different countries to bypass the service desk and message me directly on WhatsApp when something goes wrong. Now here's the kicker. I don't get any kind of cell phone allowance or reimbursement. I'm using my personal phone, my personal data, and my personal time to manage these problems for them because it's faster and keeps things running. I don't complain about it, usually. The story. It was a Sunday afternoon and I was at my parents' house enjoying a Father's Day meal with my dad. It was one of those rare moments where I could just relax and focus on family. That's when my phone buzzed. It was AM messaging me on WhatsApp in all caps like I had committed some crime. There was a major outage in one of the countries we support, and AM was furious that I hadn't already fixed it. The issue had apparently started 4 hours earlier, and he wanted to know why I hadn't jumped on it. I told him politely that I hadn't received a call from the service desk or even a ticket number yet, but that I'd look into it immediately. After all, the contract states that SD is supposed to notify me on all these things officially. Instead of acknowledging that the service desk had failed, AM blew up. He told me that I should always respond to his WhatsApp messages and not wait for the service desk to do their job. Basically, he wanted me on call 24/7 through my personal phone without following any proper process. By this point, I was already annoyed, not just because it was Father's Day and I had to cut time short with my dad, but because AM's attitude was beyond disrespectful. That's when I had an idea. I calmly fixed the issue, like I always do, and took a screenshot of AM's messages where he said I was expected to respond anytime he messaged me. The next day, I sent a screenshot to my boss and asked him to add a cell phone allowance to our billing for the client, since I was now being expected to use my personal device as part of my job. My boss agreed. He updated the billing to include the allowance and sent it to AM for approval. Not 5 minutes later, my phone rang. AM, what the hell is this cell phone allowance on the bill? Me, well, you told me I'm expected to respond to calls and messages at any time using my personal phone. Since I'm using my personal device for work, the company will need to cover the cost. AM, this is ridiculous. I'm not paying for that. AM was furious. He pulled my boss and me into a meeting and ranted about how he wasn't going to approve a cell phone allowance. That's when I showed him the screenshot of his own message. He tried to backpedal, claiming that WhatsApp isn't a formal business communication tool and couldn't justify a billing change. I smiled, pulled out my phone, and started scrolling through my WhatsApp history. I showed both him and my boss just how many times he and other managers from across the company had messaged or called me on WhatsApp to report problems. This wasn't a one-off thing. They'd been using it like an official channel for months, if not years. That's when my boss spoke up, also smiling. Boss, here's the deal. Either you approve the cell phone allowance or OP blocks all business-related WhatsApp messages and calls, and you stick to the contract. That means no more messaging him. Everything goes through the service desk, as agreed. AM realized he was trapped. He had no leg to stand on. He grudgingly agreed to pay the allowance, which ended up covering my entire phone and data plan. A nice little bonus every month. Don't get me wrong, I actually like my job. I'm happy to help and usually don't mind the WhatsApp messages since it gets issues resolved faster. But that Father's Day, AM's tone pushed me over the edge. I was done letting him take advantage of me without compensation. Now, I've got a free phone plan and a bit of extra cash every month. And AM, he's a little more careful about what he demands on WhatsApp these days. And our last story. A farm near a big city can bring many surprises. I grew up in a small town where everyone knew each other and every story spread faster than a Starbucks Wi-Fi signal. Grandpa's farm was a place of childhood memories for me, summer vacations, endless adventures, and my grandfather's quirky inventions. Sadly, as he got older, Alzheimer's took hold and he could barely remember what had happened 5 minutes ago, let alone the good old days. So we hired 4 nurses to care for him in shifts while I worked in the big city. The farm was close enough to reach by car in about 15 minutes, so we decided not to sell it completely, just kept the house, a few old barns, and a small orchard. The rest of the fields were sold to neighbors who were more serious about farming. One day, Karen moved onto a small plot of land next to Grandpa's farm. She and her boyfriend lived in a cracked-up old trailer that looked like it had seen more action than a frontline soldier. On the very first day we met, Karen told me, "Listen, kid, I got 3 rules. Don't bother me, don't talk to me, and don't piss me off." "Well, all right," I said, holding back a laugh. "Anything else?" "Yeah, don't park near my trailer. My boyfriend's twitchy, and I'm a terrible shot." It took one glance at her boyfriend, passed out on the couch inside the trailer, snoring with an empty bottle in his arms, to know the only danger he posed was if he fell on my foot. I didn't see Karen for a few months, but when I came to visit Grandpa for a week, I noticed something strange, a freshly made dirt road cutting through the old fence and leading straight to one of Grandpa's barns. As I walked closer, I saw 2 cars parked inside, Karen's old rusty pickup and her boyfriend's slightly less rusty Buick. After a quick chat with the nurses, it turned out Karen had simply lied to them, saying I had given permission. Realizing just how brazen that was, I walked up to her trailer and knocked. "Karen, come out." I knocked louder. Silence, though I could clearly hear whispering and shuffling inside. "I know you're home. Your car's in my barn." "No one's home," came Karen's muffled voice. "Seriously, I just heard you." The trailer went quiet again. I sighed, spat on the ground, and walked back to the barn. The lock had been broken for years, so I grabbed some old wooden beams and barricaded the doors from the inside. Then I secured 2 heavy steel bars across the doors, so solid even an elephant would struggle to break in. Satisfied, I headed back to Grandpa. Later that evening, just as I finished making dinner, I heard a strange creaking sound, then banging and loud cursing. I grabbed Grandpa's shotgun, crept toward the barn, and saw Karen, clearly drunk, trying to pry off a board with a crowbar. "Karen, what are we doing out here in the middle of the night?" I called out. She jumped, almost dropping the crowbar. "This is my barn, you freak! Open it or I'll—" "Or what? Hit the door with your little stick?" "Go ahead, I'm curious." Karen raised the crowbar again, and I fired a shot into the air. The blast sounded like a nuclear bomb to her. She screamed and vanished into the darkness, leaving behind the crowbar and a half a bottle of bourbon. The next morning, the police showed up. After hearing my side, the officer just snorted and walked up to Karen's trailer. Before she could even think up a lie, she yelled from the doorway, "He shot at me!" "Ma'am, were you on his property with a crowbar trying to break into his locked barn?" This is my land." "Do you have any proof of ownership for that barn?" Karen blinked like a frozen computer. "Well, no, but Then let's head down to the station and sort this out." Karen protested, but the officer wasn't having it. Her boyfriend never came to get the cars. It turned out he was too drunk to make it to the bathroom, let alone anywhere else. And so now those 2 cars sit in my barn as a monument to sweet justice. And Grandpa, he loves the story more and more each time I tell it, because thanks to Alzheimer's, it's a brand new tale every time. "Hey, Grandpa, did you hear how I kicked that crazy Karen off the farm?" "No, tell me again," he says, grinning wide. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.